Welcome back after a very long hiatus. We kind of didn't do the show for a while because we had to get the new counselors up to speed, and that seems to be happening. So we're having this, what I would call an emergency show. So this is show number 6 of Shake Up Groton. This is going to rerun if you don't catch it tonight, and I hope you tell all your friends. Tuesday, which is actually tomorrow, March 27th, at 12 noon and 7:30 p.m., and Wednesday, March 28th, at 12 and 4:30. And as I said, this is an emergency show, and I'm going to explain the whole thing. And we do have a guest tonight that I'm going to keep secret for a little while. So I can explain things, and he's going to answer some questions, I hope, regarding that. There's a hearing at the Senior Center on March 28th at 7 o'clock regarding the 6.5% increased budget that the town manager, John Burt, just introduced. This is a very, very serious situation. I still need help on the show. Email me at shakeupgroton@gmail.com. If you have any questions, I'm going to repeat that, but you can see it on the screen. The first surprise, we have a new mascot. I do, okay? And look at him. He's his name right now is Town of Groton. I put that on his side. And the matador here is a female matador, and I've named that matador Gretchen. So I don't like these names, and of course the town of Groton, I'm trying to tame the town of Groton, so that's why my name's on the matador. And I would appreciate that you email me with new names for both of them. And it doesn't have to be a male or female, though maybe the bull should be a male name. Obviously a bull is a male, but the matador can be a female or a male as she is right now. So please email me with the new names and we'll stick them on there. Or give me several and I'll change it every show. Okay? All right. I'm going to start out this show by playing 3 news events announcing the seriousness of what happened back in June-July timeframe of last year. These were on ABC was going to be the first one, Fox 61 News is the second one, and NBC is the third one. So please listen closely because they are going to be part of the discussion.
Property owners in Groton are holding their breath as the town council votes on a huge 8.7% tax hike this evening.
Due to state budget problems, town leaders are anticipating losing some $5 million in state funding and need to make up that shortfall. News 8's Tina Detel has more tonight from Groton.
Town leaders have really had to crunch the numbers to come up with this budget. And even within these pages are 4 different scenarios because they're still not sure exactly how much money the state will give them.
No matter how they look at it, cuts have to be made, taxes have to go up.
If the governor's budget was passed, we'd be in very, very big trouble. It'd be devastating for us.
The town took an initial hit when the state decided to determine education cost-sharing funding based on students enrolled in the Husky plan. Many of the students in Groton are military and don't use that state insurance.
So it didn't count those students in the formula, and it shorted us.
The town lost $9 million in ECS money. It hopes some will be restored and is planning for a $5 million shortfall, which closed an elementary school, stalled public works projects, and forced other cuts.
The budget is down 2.1%, but the mill rate with a $5 million less revenue is up 8.7%.
That's a hike of 1.9 mils or $190 for every $100,000 in assessed property value.
We try to economically survive as we can. So this is going to be a big blow.
The town council will start talking about the hike at 6:30 tonight, with a vote scheduled for 7:30, when residents can also have their say. Those with kids in schools may be more willing to accept the tax hike, but older folks on fixed incomes may not be able to afford to.
It's a rock and a hard place. We're stuck here.
Some of the state representatives who also served on local boards here in the town are doing what they can to try to keep the governor's budget in check, but then again, they may be just a few voices among many. In Groton, Tina Detel, News 8.
Just so people know, we're not stripped of cash. We actually do have money in the bank, but we like to keep it there.
Council members inside the Town of Groton Annex met tonight with an important task at hand: what to do about the budget for the next fiscal year.
I believe we've done our best in helping with the taxpayers and cutting every little thing we could out of every line item that we sat here for weeks.
It's happening all over the state, towns and cities doing whatever they can to soften the blow from the pending state budget cuts.
We don't know from the state how much revenue we're going to get. We can only guess.
Council members had to choose from 4 scenarios: keep the revenue the same as last year, or adjust the budget to include a $5, $9, or $13 million loss of revenue from the state.
So the uncertainty bothers me more than having that increase at this point.
Council members were told from state representatives that the cut would be around $3 million. They eventually voted for the town to anticipate a $5 million cut from the state, resulting in an 8.7% tax increase for homeowners. It's a preemptive maneuver that Larry Dunn feels shouldn't fall on the shoulders of town leaders.
Do a better job at the state and face up to the hole that they've dug for 20 years.
Town leaders say the tax rate increase will cost homeowners in the town of Groton an extra $190 a year for every $100,000 home assessment.
More people live in Groton than in any other town in southeastern Connecticut, and town government officials here are considering raising property taxes more than in most, if not any other towns, 8.3%.
I try not to think about it because, I can't afford an increase. I'm living from hand to mouth.
Groton has lost some property to demolition at Pfizer. The town government expects less revenue to pay for programs, so a tax increase.
With how bad the state and the town are doing as far as money goes, I think it may be appropriate.
I realize we have to have high taxes because there are a lot of people not paying taxes, renters and so forth. I'm an owner, so I feel obliged to my community.
During income tax season, taxes in general have some people ready to move.
Taxes in Connecticut are ridiculous. This state, if they could find a way to tax you for breathing, they would. That's why as soon as I retire from the military, I'm leaving.
When are you retiring?
I retire next month, so me and my family will be gone by June.
As the Groton Town Council considers the proposed budget, there's a public hearing scheduled for the 29th. In Groton, I'm Doug Green, NBC Connecticut News.
Well, that was 3 of the three major networks. We made it to Major Networks News that we went up, or our council went up on us 8.7%, all in one fell swoop. Well, folks, if you recall, the state did not take that money or not give us that $5 million. But the town still took the 8.7% from you, from all of you. So where did that money go? And they also took an extra $1 million. This was because we paying an alliance district. And we're going to probably do a show on that because that is not a very good thing. But it did put the money back in that the state was threatening to take from us. And now we are talking about, so this was just 8-9 months ago. Now we're talking about an increase proposed by our town manager of 6.5% for a total, this is mind-boggling, 15.2% increase in taxes in 1 year. Now, I don't think, I'd be willing to bet, I couldn't find it when I did a search, but there is no town in the entire United States that ever had a 15.2% increase in 1 year. I think you'd be hard-pressed to find one that's had an 8.7% increase in 1 year, which we did. Now, I used to be in the rental business. If I went up more than the cost of living, which is now about 1.5%, I would be turned into the state of Connecticut and fined for exorbitant increase in my rents. But no, Groton is doing this to us, and I don't know if everybody's even aware of this going on. I think so many people are leaving. So our elected officials said the state was the enemy. Now, us citizens, the town is our enemy. So I would like to show you 2 cartoons that I showed before, and this cartoon shows Groton residents, and it shows a ship coming, and it says State of Connecticut. Well, let's just change that name on that ship to Town of Groton, your Groton government. And all around it are issues like Balfour Beatty, and I've had shows, you can go watch them on YouTube, and here's Wilbur, if you recall, and the citizens are all skeletons because we're being starved to death, and we're leaving town. And instead of that being the state of Connecticut being Wilbur, now it's the town of Groton. See, it doesn't make any difference, it appears. I want to explain more the 8.7% increase because it's complicated. That was done as a precaution. The town manager, those reporters in those excerpts didn't quite say it right. The town manager invented these 4 categories. We either increased the budget by 0, 5 million, 10 million, or 15 million. And that was simply created, that was a guess. And they chose 5 million. And they then went ahead and collected that money as an additional tax last year, which was less than a year ago. They didn't do it. The state didn't do this to us, and I kept asking our town manager, where did this 8%, 7% go? Well, it went to our rainy day fund. You know how I've been telling you in every show that our budget, I've shown graphs where our budget in reality went up, but it didn't really go up in the mill rate because they borrowed from this rainy day fund. And matter of fact, it was very interesting because Senator Heather Bond Summers, she did that when she was running for state senator, so she could say that she didn't raise taxes in Groton, and really the taxes did go up. We were borrowing from our future. Now we want to add on to that, 6.5%, okay? And this is just unheard of. And the reasons for this, I've studied the budget, is there's an increase in the health insurance for our employees, and there's also in our retired employees, and there's also a very large increase in the borough, I noticed in the budget. The boroughs want a 7% increase, the city of Groton. Altogether, it says there's a 7% increase, which I don't dig into their budgets because that's a lot of work, but that's outrageous too. Now, why do we want to have our fund balance back up? Why did they not give this money back to us? It all comes down to bond rating. This school, I understand tomorrow that we are going to be talking to the 3 rating agencies, S&P, Moody's, I don't know the name of the third one, and we're going to try to get the best rate we can for raising the money for this school that you all voted on a while back. You voted on this before all this increase in taxes, and I think if you had that information now about the increase in taxes, you would not have voted for the school. And they want to, the bond rating agencies go by the amount in your rainy day fund. That's one of the big criteria they use to rate you. So the school has a lot to do with it. And I'm questioning why in the world are we moving ahead with this school? And I'm going to be talking a lot about that. And that is going to break Camel's back. We can't afford it, given all that's happened in really just the last year. And it's really because we can blame Mark Ofinger and Heather Bond Summers for all the borrowing against our future that they've done. That has caused a tremendous amount of problems for Groton. And we're going to get into the lack of growth of Groton is causing this problem. I want to bring up the chart that shows the increase in the mill rate. We show this every show. No, that's not it. Number 3, please. All right. This shows the mill rate. Every year just goes up. It's a ski slope. I show this chart every single show, and it's gone up tremendously since then. I should have added on the years after 2016. It's probably going to be almost vertical. And we can't, I don't see how this is sustainable. And I want to bring up the chart you just had up, Frank, showing the school. Yeah, that chart. This is what you voted on. And look at the mill rate. And I want to tell you, they just said it in the on the news. A 1.7 mill increase is equal to about or 1.7 is equal to about a 8% or so increase in taxes. So if you look here, you're looking here when you get into years 2023, 2024, you're looking at like 7-8% increase in a year in the taxes. This is on top of this 15.2 that we're looking at right now. How in the world is that sustainable? So we are experiencing a mass exodus from Groton. And how do I know that? Well, I've lived here a long time. And when you go downtown Groton, it's dead. Used to be bumper-to-bumper cars. I so happened to end up in the U-Haul place on Route 184. I asked the new manager, well, he actually brought it up to me. He said, we get so much rentals of trucks leaving Groton, but we get very little coming in. I said, what do you think the ratio is? It's a new store on 184. He says, it's about a 10-to-1 ratio of leaving to coming in. So I asked him, how much does it cost to rent a mid-sized truck to go to Florida? It's about $2,200 a one-way. So then I asked him to look up, because he doesn't know it, because he doesn't rent in Florida. What does it cost to bring the same size truck back to Groton? It costs about $800. That says it all. So we are experiencing, people vote with their feet. They are leaving. And this is very bad, because who's left? If we don't reduce taxes, that those people that are left have to pay more taxes, and this keeps compounding every year. And that's what happened to Detroit. The burden gets carried more and more by less and less people. So no wonder our new town manager, John Burt, as you all know, he was looking to leave. I don't know if he's still looking. The newspaper said, I haven't asked him, that he took out 2 other applications, and the one he had an interview, I don't know if he went this past week, that he out in Urbana, Illinois, that he's not going. But who can blame the guy? He was dumped with a very bad situation. Now I got 2 more charts that are the most important charts I'm going to show you. Charts 5 and 6, Frank. Okay, these are our new ski slopes that I'm going to show you. And let me explain grand list. A lot of people don't know what a grand list is. Grand list is the assessed value of all the property in all of Groton, okay? So if you start having businesses moving out, people moving out, yes, the buildings, there's argument, well, the buildings are still there. No, they go down in value. Assessments go down. When stores and such become empty, they are worth less. And then you have all the personal property that's inside the stores, the shelving, the product, everything, that's gone. So that reduces the amount that we can tax. So grand list is extremely important to a thriving town. The budget, we all understand that because we all have a personal one or a family one ourselves. So you can see that the budget, which is every department of the town puts in what they think they're going to spend in the next year. And you can see it's going, now these red lines are what are called trend lines, okay? And you can see that the budget's going up and the grand list is going down. And that is the worst scenario you can have in any town. That's a very bad economy, okay, for a town. A good economy is that the 2 lines are parallel. And that you really want your grand list to be what it's bringing in to be higher than the budget. That would be a healthy economy in the town. And we have the exact opposite. This is a disastrous situation. So it's time now to introduce my guest here. Councilor Conrad Heede, thank you for coming. And this was a last-minute invitation, and it wasn't easy getting this all together so quickly, but you're here, and that's great. So I'm going to put you a bit on the hot seat. So I like this is a new council. You're put on the spot right away. You were left kind of a tough situation. I'm not going to blame any of you for the 8.7%, but I am going to blame you eventually for not giving it back to us. We have a school that was voted on before all this budget fiasco with the state, and now obviously with the town and the increases in insurance and all of that. And let's have a discussion about what are the ideas of this council to do about it. And I want to talk about John Burt too, but we'll bring that up after.
Well, I can't speak for the council. You know, per our rules, I can only speak for myself.
Okay. Okay. So how are we going to get a real handle on this budget that seems to be the town manager? Well, it's out of control.
For the proposed budget, it includes several CIPs that we have to go through. And
tell the people, they don't know what a CIP is.
A CIP is special projects. So for example, there's radio system that we're looking at doing for the police department, which would cover the entire town of Groton.
I thought we did that.
We have an old radio system right now. So they've been looking at different ways to have a newer system. It's the one that we have, I guess, about 20 years old.
Yeah.
So it's dated.
Does it work?
It works still for now.
Guess what? I have a radio in my house, and it's older than that, and I still have to use it because I can't afford to buy a new one.
Right. So that would be one CIP. There's a CIP for a couple of bridges, I guess one going into Groton Long Point. I haven't gone down to look at the bridge yet, but I intend to. Apparently it's very unsafe, or could be unsafe. It was raised up during one of the storms that we had. There's another CIP for a bridge going over towards Stonington. It's in the Old Mystic Village.
Okay. Yeah, I know where it is, the one that washed out.
Exactly.
Right.
And you know, obviously we won't go through we won't vote for every CIP that's on the list. It's just figuring out priorities. Which one do we need to do now? Which one can we do, you know, later down the road?
But the 8.7 increase represents $5 million.
Oh, sure.
Okay.
No, but what's driving it, as you already mentioned, is healthcare. And you know, I think, like, when I look at this, when I talk to people, it's very interesting. Somebody wants to support their special program. I'm not going to throw anyone under the bus or anything, but let's just say I support the library. So don't cut the library funding. Go cut somebody else's program. Don't plow the streets for, you know, a few months, or I don't know. Don't repair the roof on the school. Just whatever you do, don't cut the funding for my library. But we have 3 libraries that we fund. So we really need to look at, are we funding the right number of libraries? Are they staffed appropriately? For my conversations with John Burt, the last council went a very long way to cut as much fat as they could out of the budget in terms of extra staffing. At this point, if we cut staffing, not cut staffing, but you start cutting budgets for specific departments, you end up cutting services that go along with it. But I think the story that we're going to have to work through as we go through this budget process is, or I don't know if you want to call it a story or a storyline, the tagline is going to be trade-offs. If you have to pay an extra 2.5% for your health care, then where are you going to cut within this budget to keep it flat? Because our mill rate, as you indicated on that graph, has been trending down over the last few years. It's actually down 0.5.
No, the mill rate is up.
Mill rate's
the budget
up, but the
is, it's
revenue.
because
sorry,
we're not bringing in enough revenue.
Exactly.
The revenue's down.
Mixed up. Mill rate's going like this.
That's right.
But
revenue's going down. Mill rate's
so
going
there's the
up.
X. So the
Spending's going up.
mill rate is basically flat. So any spending increase that we have this year is a tax increase.
I think what Conrad's trying to say, I'm sorry, Councilor
please, go
Heede
for it.
is trying to say is that the grand list is flat.
The grand list is flat.
Which
yes,
is
exactly.
good news, by the way, because it's been going down really steeply.
And we need it to start going up through economic development. And of course, you challenge economic development if you start increasing taxes. Like the number that I've heard from a few different people is you don't want to go up more than 2%. In my opinion, you want to keep it as flat to zero as possible until that grand list starts going back up.
That's right. All right. So just doing a little quick arithmetic here, the 8.7% we went up 8 months ago is equal to 5 million. So the 6.5 is equal to about 4.5 million. Okay? So that's almost $10 million that we've gone up getting out of all of us citizens' pockets in the last year. That's a lot to find to cut the budget, okay? To go back to where we were just a year ago, not very long ago. I don't really see where we're going to find that. Where are we going to find now? I don't see why we needed to go up on the. If we didn't have the school, that's what's making us have to have the fund balance up to, I believe, about 15 million now. It doesn't have to be, unless you want to get, 2A, AA, which is our rating right now. If we didn't have to go for bonding, we wouldn't need to have a 2 AA right now. But that's why. And we should not be increasing the fund balance. It should be incremental every year so that we don't squeeze our residents so much.
Well, and the other side of the fund balance is, well, there are a couple big things going on. We have an underfunded pension system.
Sounds familiar, folks, right?
Exactly, right. But we don't want to be at the point of where the state's finding itself. So we have to find ways to, better fund that pension. One of the ways that you do it is over time you cut staff. You look for outsourcing. You try and do more shared services. Not every department needs to have a janitorial service. You can have one service that's shared between the different departments. But 5 years from now, our schools exit the Alliance District.
I hope so. I'm embarrassed to be in that, and I should get the superintendent back on here to talk about that.
Sure.
It's not a good thing.
What happens 5 years from now is we find ourselves back where we were last year.
Right.
So whoever's sitting on the town council at that time is going to be faced with how much do they increase taxes. So there's another reason why you want to increase your fund balance gradually over the next couple of years to give them, whoever that is, a little cushion.
Right, but you're taking away from it by this hit by this school that people voted on. You do agree that they voted on it before any of this happened?
Oh, yeah, it passed before.
Yes. None of this state problem was an issue back when this went to the voters. None of this town problem of underfunded was known. It wasn't known to me. This is all new news. Actually, with John Burt, it's new news, because I went to plenty of council meetings with the old council, and I don't believe they discussed this publicly. So maybe they knew, but it was kept hush-hush. So this is the first council that I think is hearing this and where the public knows about it. And it's serious, a serious situation.
And, with the health insurance costs going up in our efforts to pay down the underfunded pensions, we have a hearing on Wednesday this week, 7 o'clock at the Groton Senior Center.
Yes, and I want you all there.
What
you
is
have
important, though, is, again, people will show up and they'll say, I love my library, not to throw the library under the bus. They'll say, I love the library, and they won't say what services they're willing to cut. So to keep my library as it is now, how many days a week do we have to have it open? Can we postpone some maintenance? Don't tell me to keep the library budget and cut the senior center, like I said.
Right.
Stop plowing because
well,
it's not fair.
Well, we have to start, and I told Conrad this before we started the show. I've watched the senior center. I'm a senior.
It's a beautiful senior center.
It's a beautiful senior center, but it's become a daycare center, and that's not what it was intended to be. We expect the world out of these things. I think the library's become a community center with all kinds of programs throughout the day. We can't afford it. We have to start figuring out how to put it back to what it was. It's
Well, we
a
have to
source of
figure out
information.
what we want. I mean, the senior center, I think, is an attraction for seniors who live here, and nobody wants to cut it. But maybe seniors can tell us, we can go 2 days without having it open, so let's close it 2 days. Especially, you know, there's a CIP for the senior center where the, excuse me, I'm sorry, they're asking for an outdoor fitness center, which sounds beautiful, but the time for it may not be now. We need to hear from the, from my perspective, I would say, no, this is not the time for it. I'd rather keep the senior center open 7 days a week and do what they're doing. But maybe the seniors would say, no, I'd be willing to close the senior center 2 or 3 days a week, or cut these programs, or you know, something to that effect, because this is important. We need to hear from them to find out what's important for them at the senior center,
Well,
so
but
that we
what are you
know
going to do,
what services to
Conrad,
cut.
if they want all of it?
Well,
And that's
everybody
going
will
to
want,
happen.
and not to you know, single them out, because everybody
Right,
who comes
right,
up is going to say, I
right.
want my school budget, I want my police budget, I want
Right,
you know this, I want
right.
that, and that's fair enough. But my strategy personally, I'm going to throw it back at each of the departments and say, we have a 0% grand list increase this year. In fact, it's negative.
Why didn't
0.5.
you tell this to the town manager and give an order to the, that's how
What he-
corporations work.
Right. What he did is he came in with
Wow.
a zero services budget,
Mm-hmm.
and we've been talking about how do you cut it below that. Honestly, I was expecting closer to a 2 or 3% total. The total
He
that
should have
came in
been
was a
given
little bit higher.
direction on
You're right.
what to do. This is not how corporate America works. You set the target and your executives meet that target. And I don't think the council gave good direction to him. He just took what his staff wanted and he passed it on to you folks, and that's not the direction it wasn't helpful. He's the expert on the line items. You can't all, counselors are your ordinary people.
I mean, well, right. I mean, we're ordinary people. We didn't know the direction that the grand list would go, so we needed a starting point.
No, this is a
Sorry for
terrible
this.
starting point. Now, I want to bring up a bunch of stuff because I've had shows on them, and they're they're big items, not these little piddly stuff, okay? Balfour Beatty, you know, $7.5 million a year that we're providing services, and I've got all the numbers. Nobody's asked me for anything. I was promised after the budget by the town manager that we were going to start working on this. I've heard nothing, okay? These are huge numbers.
It's on our to-do list.
Well, that's a big to-do.
Absolutely.
That's one of the biggest. That should have been started when you all got, if I was on the council, it would have been started right away. All right, 600, the odd fellows. I would have the attorneys, and I would talk to a little more sophisticated attorneys than our town attorneys about reopening that whole issue. That's $600,000 a year that we are losing, that this organization doesn't get taxed, but they get our services. They get our police, they get our ambulance, they get our fire department, they get everything. And they're getting it for, I think they pay $60,000 a year. It's a joke. It's an absolute joke for 10 years. I don't know what happens after the 10 years. It's a joke, okay? The Noank Farm, this is the one I just laugh about. We have land there. There's about 5 bushes of summer on it. It's all a joke because there's a handful of people in Noank. Remember, I had on my show, or I had somebody call in who was from Noank, and it's 3 people who don't want their views destroyed, and that's about half the acreage of Oddfellows. It could have, 55 and older housing put on it, and we could be earning probably half of what we would get from Oddfellows. That's another $200,000 to $300,000 right there. Okay, these things add up. Okay, joining the city and the town. This seems to go hush hush. We got 4 counselors now who live in the city, which Conrad, I believe, is one of them. Okay, nobody talks about it. We have a mayor over in the city who's about, everything's his city. We can't afford all these town halls. Redundant police services, redundant planner, inspector, all of it. Redundant service, how many square miles is the city? About 3?
I'm not sure.
It's 3.
It's something like that.
Yeah.
But the town pays half the city police department budget. The city pays the other half plus the police chief. And
we have 2 chiefs. Why? We could have one chief.
City tax resident pays for that chief.
Yeah.
And I think they pay a little bit more for
They
their
get
police
their own
service
mill rate.
because they, generally speaking, the city would like to have a police force devoted to just the city area.
Well, let them have it. Then have it themselves and charge your residents town. I don't think it's big enough to subsidize. There's not enough income there. But let them have it. The point is, there's no talk of combining services with the city.
The city has to, what we do is we look for where we have duplication. So we have one public works director for the town. Because of the way the law is written, we have one public works director in the city. We pay about 60% of the town one, 70% of the city one. Those are two public works directors. So we need to have a conversation on why is it necessary to have that second one. If the city really needs to have their highway department, no matter who takes care of those roads, it's going to cost the same amount of money. Maintaining roads, replacing roads, cleaning out the basins.
Right, but you don't need, there's overlap in
There
trucks,
is some
equipment.
overlap, and that's where we have to sit down with the city and we have to start talking to them about if
Conrad,
it's really
you
that
think
important.
when I go by the public works of the town's garage, or I go down behind the city hall there where their garage is,
I should say I, not we.
There's
because
vehicles.
I'm speaking for myself.
Okay, there's vehicles sitting there all the time that aren't being utilized. So there's downtime. I'm talking about the equipment. There's downtime to equipment at all points of the day. So that equipment should be better utilized. And if you had one set of equipment that served all of it, that equipment would be utilized more hours of the day. Okay, so that's a savings, huge savings.
I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just,
Well, is
commenting
there
on how it
going to
is.
be any conversation begun? Well, this council you've already
This
got
would
a
be-
half a year
This
gone
would be a
by.
good council for the city and the town to talk. So it's my intention to have that conversation.
Well, you're having once a month. You've invited the city
Mm-hmm.
council in, I believe. Has there begun any kind of discussions like this?
At this point, not officially. We have, one-on-one conversations.
Governor Malloy, who's no fan of mine, he's your party.
But the city has to tell us that they want to join it.
Well, you're a little right.
little
You're
both.
half right. Also, for you city people who are disgusted with these increases in the budget and your taxes going sky high, you can also petition to put on the ballot for the city and the town to join together. And I think you all should do that and bypass your town council. Well, is there an intention by your council to push this subject?
I think the intention is to look for cost savings. So you
That's not
coordinate-
answering the question.
It isn't answering the question because you're looking for a specific answer. And the goal
Of
should
course.
be, of course, but the goal should be how do you do things cheaply and efficiently?
Well, having two little guys, Malloy, I began to say about, I don't like him that much, but he detested this division we have here, which is why he targeted us. It was expressed because he knows we have space here for lots of improvement, and that's a big one. I don't know if we've studied everything to death in this town.
Before you ever even think about having one police department, you have to have a police radio system that covers the entire town. And right now, we don't have that. There are things that we need to do to improve our town police department to get it up to the level that it can take on the city. It's not just like you eliminate the city police department and eliminate funding and it just goes away.
Well, you do it department by department. Don't start with the police. Start with something else. There's a lot smaller departments than police. That's probably one of the biggest departments.
That is the biggest department.
Right.
And
So
they do a great job.
Why don't we have one inspection department, one planner? Why don't you start there? That's easy.
Exactly. You have
Okay.
to start with these small things that build up confidence. If you try and do the big thing all at once, you're going to run into these other issues.
Right. But you got to start somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm hoping this council is going to, Balfour Beatty is your next biggest. I'd say the biggest savings is from a combination of the town and the city. I'd say that's your biggest savings. Then next is the Balfour Beatty problem. Then, and I think both
But we
of
also
those
need to
two
be
problems.
doing economic development. So Balfour Beatty adds to the tax revenue that we gain. but you're not growing your grand list just by adding them to the tax
Oh,
revenue.
why not? They're not on our grand list now. Balfour Beatty is equivalent. I don't know if it's been assessed.
What I mean is they already exist.
Oh, no, Conrad, you have that wrong. Balfour Beatty is not on our grand list. So if they get added to, if Mary, our assessor, goes in there, and I believe she has, and goes assesses, I believe there's 2,200 units in there, it's as if they just got built. That we just had a 2,200 unit
No, you're right. I mean, it goes on, it adds to the grand list, but it's not like it adds to new development in the town. So my point was just it's already there. So we add it to the list.
I want to remind the listeners out there, Balfour Beatty is a private company. They're on the New York Stock Exchange. They're London-based. They're not even an American company.
I'm not defending them.
They
by
have
any stretch of the imagination.
They bought all the base housing throughout the country. I believe all the ones in the Northeast, and I gave you all of those. I even showed you the documents up in Maine, over in Rhode Island. They own all those towns. Negotiated with Balfour Beatty, and Balfour Beatty's been paying them for the services provided. The only one in New England who didn't participate in that was Groton, who is by far the biggest of any of those. I think we're almost bigger than all of them, and I think there's 5 communities. We're bigger than all of those put together, I believe, in number of housing units. And I talked to many of the folks who were around when this was going on, and they were astonished that Groton did not participate. And so this was back in 2004 when it was privatized. So I average, I believe, $4 million in services average over that 13 years. And it's interesting, it matches up with the time that Mark Ofinger was the town manager. And I blame him 100% for this. And that comes to, I believe, my memory's right, about $59 million in lost revenue, or what it has cost every citizen. And I'm going to remind you, and this is all memory on my part, that's $180 every man, woman, and child per year in Groton is paying to subsidize this private stock-held company. This is unbelievable. And that, if you have a family of 5, that's about $1,000 a year that you are subsidizing this company who's not a private, not-for-profit entity. They are a private shareholder-owned company. Okay, Conrad, that is unbelievable. I don't know if you watched my show 2, I believe I covered. No, show 1 was when I had the superintendent.
We've talked about this quite a bit.
Well, we got to do something about it. Oh, by the way, I want to get this in this show. I love the Urbana, Illinois method of interviewing a new town manager, or they don't call it a manager there, where they whittle it down to 4 finalists, and then I read the whole thing at the Urbana website, and then they invite the public in to interview, essentially ask question of the 4 finalists. We do absolutely the opposite in Groton. We put everything behind closed doors in executive session, and the council decides who they're going to hire. We know nothing about it, the public. And I think that system is fantastic, and I suggest we look at it. Now, I want to talk about John Burt. I've met with him a lot. I like John Burt as a person. I think he's a real nice guy. I don't have any issue with his niceness. He came from north part of Michigan, which I've been to. It's a very rural area of Michigan. His budget before he came, I know you guys didn't hire him, I know that, was $25 million, and we're talking here, you see the numbers up there, a budget of what, $128 million, okay? It's more than 5 times where he came from. I do question his, and he's made efforts to leave, which is kind of shocking to me. He hasn't been here but 9 months. And I'm questioning his desire and ability to tackle. Groton has very big problems. And we need real super capable people. And I think people that aren't even haven't worked for government. These are like I used to do, I used to go into companies when I worked for the Disney family and turn companies around that were in financial trouble. And you have to make tough choices here. And the 6.5% increased budget that we got from him is not somebody who's making tough decisions. And there's many things I've suggested that he do. We need a total reorganization of economic development. Right now, the economic development director is under the planner. Totally wrong, unheard of in other towns. That should be a separate position, separate department. He hasn't reorganized any of this. So I'm not too thrilled with our prospects for economic development because it's just not designed properly. So I'd like to hear from you. First of all, how are we going to stop him from looking for another job? He does not own a home here. He lives in an apartment. So he's not tied down. And that's something I think we should consider to make law, is that if you become a department head or town manager minimally, that you gotta live, buy a home, and you can force that. So this doesn't happen. So what's the council doing here to, I know you can't tell me the details. He makes $157,000 a year, which is about 27,000 more than the last town manager. It was an increase that's huge. What's the outlook here with John Burr?
I don't think he really wants to move. I think he's looking at options, and
so he's still looking at options?
I think he's willing to talk. I think he's not unhappy here, and he's actually brilliant. I've spoken with him a number of times, and I'm very impressed. He knows what he needs to do, reorganizing the different departments, and I think you'd be very happy with some of his thoughts and ideas.
Okay. I can't get him to come on the show, by the way. I have tried. He will not come on. I don't think, if they're so brilliant, why doesn't he come on and tell the people, I don't think he's got a great rapport going with the population. They don't even know who he is. And I think they should know who he is.
Oh, sure.
So,
it would be nice to get him.
He's a pretty quiet guy.
Yeah, you have to get him one-on-one, and he jibber jabbers. He talks a lot, actually.
Okay. I haven't heard him jibber jabber, but okay.
Believe me, he does.
Okay.
He's a pretty funny guy. And he really knows what he's doing. He has some great ideas, and I think when I've asked him questions, he comes back to me and surprises me with his answers, that they're very in-depth, and he's good. We need to keep him. I'm very happy with him.
I hope we're not going to offer him more money, because...
Well, I think what we need to do is, as part of reorganization, we probably should talk about getting him a little bit better or a different support staff in place. My thought is you should have an assistant town manager who, if he goes to these meetings, this guy can be a contact for these departments over here. Maybe give him a little bit more support.
May I suggest something?
Sure.
In my opinion, the most important department for Groton into the foreseeable future is economic development.
Absolutely.
Okay? That should be under the same roof. I'm a believer that you don't go email back and forth between, you have to have face-to-face connection between your economic development people and the town manager. They should be under one roof. It's very critical. So they can go down a lot of it is showing maps.
Well, sure, part of that, when you get all the departments, I would like to see them all in one building. You can do a lot of shared services.
All right, but that's more money to spend.
It does. It costs a lot more money
Let's
up front
move
to start.
something else that's in the basement at the town hall.
You move them up
the hill, okay? And let's get the economic development people down in the same office with John.
Well, where are they sitting now?
They're up on the hill in the annex.
Oh.
They're not together at all. That shouldn't be so. And let's get economic development on its own, with its own director, somebody real flamboyant and a lot of energy and lots of ideas. Let's get somebody to head that department up like that. We need to sell Groton, okay? We got a lot of good stuff going on here, and believe me, I'm out there where the rubber hits the road, and people don't know about what's going on here.
I think most of our school properties now are being marketed, a lot of the space. We have a lot of bites out there, if that makes sense. So I think we're going to see a lot of things happen in the next probably 3 to 5 years.
They call those, what, an RFP? And you know how many developers answer those? They always get a lot of bites. Doesn't mean it's reality, okay? So don't get real excited that that's meaningful, because I don't want to be a naysayer, but it costs nothing to answer them, okay? So you can't go by, it's personal relationships in commercial development, and it's a lot of that, and I don't think, you know, I'm familiar with some of these, and I don't think they're necessarily, I wouldn't be jumping for joy yet until you get somebody to sign on the
No, you don't jump for joy until you get a signature on the
That's
bottom line.
That's right. And you need to have real go-getters, and we need to have some artistic people. We have to be a part of marketing these properties, and it's not easy, okay? So
that's kind of why the forecast is we have to hold the budget as steady as possible for the next 2 to 4 years.
You got it.
Until we get the economic development moving, and then we can start growing the grand list. Hopefully in the meantime,
that's right.
Balfour Beatty, we've come to an accommodation with them, and we can start.
Yeah, but I'm afraid you're going to wuss out this council. The last council totally wussed out on Oddfellows Home because they didn't get the right legal support. Okay.
I think and I can't speak for them, but I think they felt like they were doing the right thing, and right now we're locked in. So there's not a whole lot that we can do for the next few years except become more familiar with the issues that
Well, I
next time
think
it
you
comes
should
around.
talk to real estate attorneys who have tax expertise and see if we are so locked in. Okay, I think it's worth investigating because it's a lot of money. And it's, you know, just think about $600,000, what we could do with $600,000. It's a lot. Now, I just want to say to the listeners, I'm not against a shiny new school. Okay, I want to get back to the school thing because that is a huge expenditure, and I'm not against it, but we are making decisions, I think, for many families where they're going to have, we have these increases, even the 8.7 that's already in place that we didn't get back. There are people in Groton who are making decisions between food, medicine, and paying their taxes. It's that serious. It's that dire. And I don't know if you counselors are aware of that. And I think children, there was a thing on TV a week ago, I don't know, it was on 60 Minutes, but that were kids who where their parents were in financial trouble, they way underperformed. And when they were gotten out of financial trouble, they did better, and the attendance went up. So kids need to have a safe feeling environment at home where the parents aren't under financial duress. And this kind of thing is going to put them on. People aren't under stress that they're going to lose their homes to the town. And I think you counselors have to be aware. And these are not the people who are going to come in Wednesday night and speak. They're not good at speaking, maybe. They don't feel that they can talk in front of a group. Those aren't the ones you're going to hear from.
We also take emails and phone calls, letters.
Yes, so this show's going to be on March 27th, 12 and 7:30, and Wednesday again, the 28th, 12 and 4:30. I want to thank Conrad for being brave enough to come on the show. He did a great job. Let's hope he can convince the other 8 of them to think some of the ways he does. That's not always easy. And I need you all to show up on Wednesday, okay? If you don't have a ride, email me at shakeupgroton@gmail.com, and I'll pick you up, okay? If you can't make it, you can email. I don't have the town's email address, but I'm sure you can go onto the website. Each counselor has an email address. You can email them and tell them you can't afford it. You can't do it. You can't stay here anymore. And if you can't, just come and show support. Stand there with somebody else who's speaking to them, okay? Bring a crowd, bring your friends that live in Groton and say, I can't afford it anymore. Don't just have all these people who want the library and this and that. You folks who can't afford it, I know there's a ton of you out there on fixed incomes. So please, come Wednesday night, 7 o'clock at the Senior Center. Okay, so I don't know when we're going to have the next show. We're working on it, and thank you again, Conrad, for coming.
Thank you for your time.
Okay. Bye.